How's it going, everybody? I'm Josh from Elder Drunken Highlander, and I'm coming to you with a paper deck tech video for Bennie Bracks Zoologist Mono White Lands Matter. It's not quite a landfall deck, it's a lands matter deck. It uses a lot of utility lands and land-based combos, and boy, oh boy, is it fucking fun. I've had multiple different commanders for this deck. We've had Jeru with Eyes Open before, using like a little bit of a Planeswalker sub-theme, and we've had Tomek as well. People also have used Oswald in the Mono White's Lands Discord channel on our Discord server. So if you want to talk Mono White Lands, we have that. You can go check that out. People have used a bunch of different commanders there. We've talked about them all, but Bennie is the one that I'm on right now because he says those magical words, draw a card. And there's a lot of token synergies with Landfall and White. So it turns out it works out really, really great. We're going to break the entire deck down, go through all of the cards that I have in my paper iteration of it. We're going to start with the Landfall payoffs, and we're going to end with the combo pieces at the very end. So stick around, and we'll quickly just go through all the cards in the deck, tell you each of their roles, and break it down. I figured this would be easier to do than a big, in-depth, like, high production value deck tech, because I have the deck in paper right here. I play it all the fucking time. All I did was swap like 20 cards when Bennie got printed. Bennie 20, baby. So I figured, why not just do it this way? Emeria Shepherd is our best card. It is just our best card. It brings back whatever the fuck we want from the graveyard whenever we get a plains, including cards that get plains, using Core Cartographer, which can get us any plains from our deck, and Astronaut's Altar, we can just get every single plains from our deck and a bunch of mana with this thing, and a bunch of other stuff too. The possibilities are endless with this thing. Sacrifice a Sun Titan, return Sun Titan, bring a land back. You can loop with Zurin Orb, Sun Titan, Astronaut's Altar, this thing, and a bunch of other stuff. There's just so many loops that you can do with Emeria Shepherd, so many combos, and so many just insane value plays that you can do with it too. It's just nuts. It's absolutely nuts. Field of Dead is our next best landfall payoff. It's just easy to find, easy to assemble, and easy to make tokens to draw cards for Bennie and overwhelm the board. This one's great. We can hit our own things with this for ETB stuff, as if we had an Astronaut's Altar or another way to kill it, or we can just use it as removal. Drawing cards is great, and these guys are also win cons on their own. They can spew out tokens for Bennie and draw us a bunch of cards, as can these, but these also allow us to buff our creatures and swing for the win, which is the most common way that we win with this deck. There are a lot of different combos in this deck, but mainly we're going to be winning by attacking in this deck, just because we have so many creatures. We have a couple different ways to buff them, and it's just easy to do. It's just, we're just going to get to board states where it's just like, oh, guess I turn things sideways and win now, and it's great. It's really, really nice. Just like a green token deck, right? Avenger Zendikar, we don't quite have it, but it's the same. So these are the ways we can get lands into play. Equipment that put extra stuff into play. Here's that Core Cartographer I was talking about earlier. Knight of the White Orchid searches for any planes, just like the Cartographer. And then also the Cartographer. Ooh, that was a nice slip of the tongue there. This is a Keeper of the Accord. It can get us a land if our opponents have more lands in their end step, and a creature if our opponents have more creatures. So it draws us a card with Bennie, gets us a body, and gets us a land if needed to. The land part doesn't trigger that much in this deck, but it's still really, really sweet. Walking Atlas puts extra stuff into play. This is a colorless Rampant Growth. Weather Wayfarer is probably one of our best cards. It just gets us whatever lands we need. Really great with our land sacrifice outlets, and it can also keep our land count down by searching for lands that bounce or sacrifice lands when they enter. So it's just a sweet card. Speaking of keeping our land card down, if we have a way to keep our land count down with the Archaeomancer's map, we can just put stuff into play for days. It is awesome. Same with Crucible Worlds. We can put a lot of different lands into play with this thing. Recur a fetch from the graveyard every single turn, get 2 landfall triggers. I shouldn't have to explain why Crucible of Worlds is good in a landfall deck. It just is. It just is, guys. Next, we're going to go over our lands. We'll start with our basics. We have 1 basic plains and a bunch of snow-covered plains as well. The reason for that is because we have Sunstone, which says sacrifice a snow-covered land, prevent all combat damage we dealt this turn, and 1 tutorable basic that's not snow-covered, just to raise our number of different named lands for Field of the Dead. That's the secret tech. I have considered running just 1 wastes in here too. Just 1 waste, just 1, to also increase that count, but I haven't felt like I've needed it, and I'd rather have something that makes a color. There are other things that I can search to get the Field of the Dead into play. This is in the wrong section. This was supposed to be in a different section. Whoops. Alright, we'll just put it to the side for now. Let's talk about all of our utility lands. There are so very many utility lands. I gotta make sure they all fit here. This is the bread and butter of the deck. This is what the deck is all about, is these utility lands. They're just so important to the deck, so key, so crucial to what this deck does. There we go. That's a plenty. So first, let's talk about our tutorable planes. Let's talk about these guys. We got Mistville Plains, we got Idyllic Grange. They are able to be fetched by things that look for plains. Mistville Plains is really sweet because we can put things at the bottom of our library so we can tutor it out again. So if we have a land in our graveyard, we can put it at the bottom of our library and search that thing out with a core cartographer or something similar. And Idyllic Grange is just tutorable, usually untapped. And, I very rarely put counters on things with it. But Field of the Dead, baby. Field of the Dead. That's all it's there for. And every once in a while, I get people with a fetch land combat trick thing with it and like Night of the White Orchid or some shit. And when I do that, it's so dang worth it. Let's talk about our token producing lands. There's also Legion's Landing to be counted in this group because it flips into a land that produces tokens, and it's definitely one of our better ones, especially with the Castle Dracula being able to make blood tokens reduce costs for our vampires. With enough Legion's Landing tokens and like welcoming a vampire and shit, we can just tap it to make blood tokens, draw a card with Benny, and then filter using the blood tokens, so it's very good. This one also sacrifices the land. Sacrificing land is very important for us with the Kildrodian Outpost, and 2 mana to make a token is a really good rate. And then of course Castle Ardenvale. People play that card in Pioneer. Y'all know what that card does at this point. Y'all know what it means. Let's talk about Inventor's Fair and Urza's Saga, our tutor lands. These are going to be getting Codex Shredder and Skullclamp mostly, but this one also gets Ashnod's Altar sometimes. Big combo piece. Speaking of combo pieces, this says that our combo piece of Armageddon cannot be countered, which is something that people like to do, or Faith's Reward, either or. People just like to counterspell that. I don't know why. These cards are also combo pieces. These lands, we'll talk more about these guys later, but this one can untap one of our token producing lands, which is really sweet, getting those extra draws off of Benny. Extra draws here as well. We have 5 fetch lands in this deck if you count Myriad Landscape. The fetch lands each just allow us to get extra landfall triggers and extra draws with Benny. Roadside Reliquary I also want to talk about. This card is just really, really underrated. The card draw from this, especially with the Crucible of Worlds or other Recursion engine, is nuts. It's like divination every single turn, but you also get a landfall trigger. And that's more or less the stuff that I want to talk about. One last thing is the Flagstones of Trokar. I guess the Thespian Stage 2 and these ones. So we'll talk about these ones before we go. This just, when it gets destroyed, you get another Plains. Really, really good in this deck. This becomes a second copy of Field of the Dead. That is its purpose. Lotus Field is really good getting, if you have Weather Wayfarer, you need to keep your land count down. You find this thing, you sacrifice 2 lands, you have brought back or something, you can get them back. And also just having for a lot of mana, being able to put lands in the graveyard is all good. It's all great. It's all golden. Let's talk about the land destruction. These are the cards we have that destroy lands. These 3 destroy all lands. Right here, Armageddon, Catastrophe, and Fall of the Thrawn, and these ones don't quite. This one actually doesn't destroy any lands. It exiles all permanents, but it allows us to bring our lands back 1 turn at a time, so it lets us get a lot of extra value from that. And I find that usually people run out their lands early game and then not have as much access to them in the late game, whereas my deck just plays lands all the fucking time. So this is a good way to set my opponents back while also putting myself ahead, getting some extra landfall triggers. And there's a cool combo with it and Oblivion Sower that we'll talk about a little bit later. These ones, this is the least salty destroy all lands effect because at least everyone gets their lands back, and it's the best one for us too because we could disenchant it and be really mean. We can also just get extra landfall triggers from it. It's sweet. This one's modular. It could also destroy all creatures, so that's good for us. Sunstone bricks combat and also sacrifices our snow-covered lands, and Zern Orb is just our best way to sacrifice lands. It's really, really good to be able to do that for free. You'll see why in a little bit. Let's go to what we do with our lands once we sacrifice them, which is recur them. Every single one of these cards just brings back things that died this turn. Armageddon, Faith's Reward, that's a 2-card combo. We have lands, our opponents don't, and usually they scoop it up after that. Even Second Sunrise, which gives our opponents their lands back, allows us to get a lot of landfall triggers and a lot of value from doing that, and is enough to catapult us into the lead. And Cosmic Intervention is a slightly different Faith's Reward. It's got a little bit different restrictions, but it's pretty good. This one only brings back 2 things, but it's sweet nonetheless. All these cards are awesome. All these cards are awesome. And then we have our slow recursion too. These things all just bring 1 thing back at a time from the graveyard, and that thing is almost always a land. Haven't played with this card that much yet, haven't cast it, so don't know how good it is, but it seems sweet. It's like a rampant growth if there's land in your graveyard, right? That can't be bad. Can't be bad. Oh, I need Sun Titan. There we go. Tutor Suite. These things, these aren't our only tutors, but these are the ones that are in here just to tutor. This just gets, like, basically almost exclusively Emiria Shepherd. Sentinel Flute, just for Emiria Shepherd. These get Legion's Landing mostly, and this gets Field of the Dead mostly. There are other things that it can get, but those are the main things. Let's talk about generic token generators. There they are. They make tokens. This says draw a card when during your opponent's turn. It goes back into your deck, which is really spicy. And then you can also just dump all your oodles of mana into it that you have at the late game and win. This is a land that makes a token every turn, and it also produces a token when it enters, and it also reduces the cost of our Voldaren estate, so it's really, really sweet. Shouldn't have to talk about this card at all. And Amaria's Call is secretly a land, which is why it's in here, but it also makes tokens for Bennie, which can be exciting. The removal suite. This is our removal suite. These are the cards we use to kill things. We have 2 board wipes and a pseudo board wipe and Settle the Wreckage. I like these because they also give our opponents lands, which means that we can use our catch-up stuff like Land of the Right Orchid a lot more easy. And also Settle the Wreckage can hit our own creatures when we have a board full of tokens to get all of our basics onto the battlefield at once and do some pretty nuts stuff. These cards are just generically good. This card is fucking underrated. It's a really, really like well-costed removal spell that can also double as a land. I don't know why people aren't running it. Cut some bad removal for this. And lastly, Disenchant. Sometimes we have to kill our own combo pieces like Fall of the Thrawn or Celestial Dawn. Rhyme unintended. And when that happens, we have Disenchant to make sure that we can not brick ourselves with our own cool cards that we're running. Let's talk about utility and value stuff. Things that draw cards, things that protect our stuff, things that make mana. This is a proxy made by one of the greatest artists in the universe. It doesn't even tell you what Mana Crypt does besides like fucking pay up. But yeah, that's it. I borrowed this from Kevin. It's not mine. Everyone look at it. Ooh. Ah. Pretty. My Lightning Greaves just wasn't up to snuff. And you know, everyone knows why this card's good. Draw card, draw card, draw card. This is sweet with Bennie because the treasure token draws you a card too, so you can draw 2 cards per turn with mono white, which is sick. And then of course Skull Clamp is good. We don't need to talk about why Skull Clamp is in my token deck. We don't need to talk about it. Or my Landfall deck with a token sub theme. My land theme deck with a token sub theme. Whatever. Let's talk combos. I know this is the part y'all have been waiting for. The infinite combos. Let's just get into it. Let's just talk about them. Let's just lay all these cards out, baby. This deck has quite a few different combos. Some of them win the game. Some of them are just nuts. Some of them just do silly things. But they're all very cool and very fun. And I very much enjoy them. So we're going to talk about them. Alright, so first, let's talk about this one. This is our land... Ooh, wrong one. Woo. Let's talk about this one. This is our land-based combo right here. Using our Deserted Temple and our Rings of Brighthearth, we can copy Deserted Temple's untap abilities so it untaps both itself and Nykthos. With Nykthos producing enough mana, we can pay for the Rings of Brighthearth, the Deserted Temple, and the Nykthos activation to produce infinite mana from our lands, dump it into a White Sun Zenith or what have you, and then just win the game, I don't know, with some mana, or just make infinite mana every turn and not have to count ever again and be able to use your utility lands for utility instead of having to use them for mana. Like, it's just a nice combo. It's very sweet. It's very convenient. We're going to leave this here because this does other things. Next, we're going to talk about this 2-card combo. With Dimensional Breach, we exile everyone's permanents, including their lands. We can manage to cast an Oblivion Sower. After doing that, we can steal every single land from some player's exile. Most players don't put their lands in first. We probably will be. So if we can get like Ancient Tomb and some other lands that can get some mana quickly and get this out like the 2nd or 3rd turn after we Dimensional Breach somebody, we can usually get like 5 or 6 lands, maybe more, from somebody just by doing it, which is really, really awesome. It feels super great. McKindy Stampede is a 1-card combo because we have tokens, and it just buffs them, and then we kill people. You know, I put it in, I wasn't sure where else to put it, so it's in the combo pieces. Let's talk about this monstrosity. This is a 5-card combo with Celestial Dawn, Ashnod's Altar, Wall of Resurgence, Emiria Shepherd, and Drownyard Temple. It's convoluted. Let's move these out of the way so we can talk about it. So first, you have Celestial Dawn on the battlefield. All your lands are now plains. You have Emiria Shepherd on the battlefield. Drownyard Temple in your graveyard. Pay 3 mana with Drownyard Temple and return to the battlefield tapped. Because it's a plains due to Celestial Dawn, Emiria Shepherd triggers and returns a permanent Wall of Resurgence from your graveyard to the battlefield. Wall of Resurgence puts 3 counters on the Drownyard Temple, turning into a creature, and you use Ashnod's Altar to sacrifice both these guys for 4 mana. Then you use 3 of that 4 mana to return the Drown Your Temple to play tapped and repeat the process. Just do this for infinite landfall triggers and infinite colorless mana. It's really, really cool. With an Amulet of Vigor, which I'm not running in my deck, but people keep telling me I should be, you can also get infinite white mana as well. It's pretty sweet. And while we have my boy Emiria Shepherd and my other boy Ashnod's Altar, do you like this Ashnod's Altar proxy, by the way? I own a bunch of Ashnod's Altars. Like, I could put a real one in this deck. There's like 2 in my binder, but this proxy looks so gnarly. I just like to use it. It just looks so nasty. The printer was out of like every single color ink besides magenta, and it just looks disgusting. Like, I imagine Ashnod's Altar would actually look. With Sun Titan, Emiria Shepherd, and Ashnod's Altar, you can use Sun Titan. Oh, and you need Zuran Orb too. Whoop, there it is. You can use Sun Titan to return a Plains. The Plains will trigger Emiria Shepherd. You hold priority sacrificing the Plains and the Sun Titan to these 2 things, and then you just keep looping it. You get infinite life, mana, and landfall triggers. Super simple stuff. Super cool stuff. And then we have this loop as well. Zuran Orb is a key card in the deck, if you couldn't tell. That's also tutorable by Urza's Saga. I forgot to mention that. And honestly, it's probably the best one to tutor by Urza's Saga, besides maybe this card. Anyway, with Codex Shredder, Zuran Orb, and Faith's Reward, you can go through your entire a land base, sacrificing them to Zuran Orb, then use Codex Shredder to return Faith's Reward from your graveyard to the battlefield, and then cast Faith's Reward, returning all your lands and returning the Codex Shredder to the battlefield, which means that you'll then be able to do the loop all over again. It's really, really spicy. It's really, really cool. It's really, really fun. You just get infinite life, infinite landfall triggers, and if you have 10 or more lands, you also get infinite mana. I'm digging right now to find the Armageddon from in here. There it is, because you can also do the loop with Armageddon. So you can sacrifice all your lands to Zuran Orb and then use Codex Shredder to bring back Faith's Reward. Faith's Reward brings back the Codex Shredder and the lands. But let's say you don't have the Zuran Orb. Let's say your opponents were smart and they exiled that shit. You can use this instead. So you use Codex Shredder and you copy the ability with Rings of Brighthearth. The targets are Armageddon and Faith's Reward. You bring them both back. Armageddon, destroy everything. Faith's Reward, bring it all back. You need a lot more mana to do it, but hey, this deck does nothing but make fucking mana. You have 40 lands, and you're going to have like maybe a third to half of them on the battlefield by the time the game's over. It's really, really sweet. Alright, I've rambled for long enough. That is the entire deck. Hopefully you have a comprehensive understanding of my deck and how it works, and if you liked it, you can be inspired to build some decks on your own. If you want to talk about this, we have a Mono White Lands chat in our Discord, and we also talk about this all the time on Twitter, so you can @ me on Twitter about Mono White Lands stuff, and I'll talk shit with you. Thank you all so much for watching. Stay janky, my friends, and I'll see you next time.